I actually start to think maybe I won't take the lead of the race today, when suddenly I see first and second walking ahead of me, and it's 125 degrees. Maybe they've run out of water, maybe they're struggling in the heat. I think to myself, oh, this is great, this is my chance to take the lead. And as I get up closer to them, suddenly we drop down this big hill, and all I see is this raging, rushing river of water ahead of me. Now, I'm in the desert, so at first I'm like, is that a mirage? Where's all this water come from? On day 2, we'd crossed the mountain range that has the snow up there, and the snow leopards live up there. That melts, of course, during the day, so it creates like floods of water everywhere. So I go down into this water. Now, this crossing's about the size of a football field in length. I'm over 6 foot, so it's up to my waist in height. It's rushing strongly. It's freezing cold from the snow melt. And as I go down into the water, first and second are now, just ahead of me. This is my chance to catch up to them. And as I go through the water, I get up closer to them, and then I hear barking, yelping, and whining behind me. And I look at first and second to see if they've heard it. The water's rushing strongly, so maybe they don't hear it because they continue on. I continue on too because I'm about to take the lead of the race, and that's what I'm out there to do. Then the barking, yelping, and whining gets even louder.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Purple Stars podcast. My name is Sarah, I'm your host, and today's guest is an ultramarathon runner, motivational speaker, New York Times bestselling author, and above all, he's an inspiring, positive, uplifting human being, and we're so excited to have him on the show. Please welcome Dion Leonard.
Thanks so much for the introduction. It's great to be on the show.
We are so excited. My team and I just, when your wife was in touch with us and she said, you're happy to come on, I said, can you believe there is this guy, he's an ultramarathon runner. There is a dog who followed him, and then he adopted the dog, and they were like, wow, I cannot believe that this is so cool. So I can't wait to dive into all of this. But before we get to that point, I would love to get to know you a little bit better, because I read, Dion, you used to weigh 250 pounds. You smoked heavily, you drank excessively, and fast forward, you're an ultramarathon runner who has competed in numerous ultramarathons in the most extreme conditions. What happened in between, and what made you turn your life around?
Well, that's a really good question, because it seems like so long ago, and it seems like a completely different person that I was back then. And going through that change was something that I didn't realize where it would take me, of course, and how big a journey that would actually become. But you're right in saying I was 250 pounds, pack-a-day smoker, heavy drinker, big eater. And I was probably putting myself into an early grave. And I was very fit as a child playing sport, but I got lazy into my 20s and 30s. And I guess I was just going down the wrong path with life and everything in general, fitness as well. And I really had to make a decision as to which way things were going to keep going. Thankfully, I made the right decision, but that was actually through a choice that I made. I actually made a bet with a friend of mine as to who could run the half marathon distance the fastest. And it really made me decide to make some decisions to change how I was and to try and train for this race and to try and get fit. And I started to lose some weight. I started to get fitter. And I get to the race. I beat my friend at the race. And I start to feel good about myself. I'd lost a lot of weight. I was fitter. And I started to think maybe running was a really good thing for me, not only physically, but also mentally as well. Had a very difficult childhood, was brought up in a very depressive, abusive, destructive family home, left home at a very early age. And I had a lot of struggles in life. So a lot of those reasons that I would go on to become a heavy drinker, heavy smoker, a big eater was probably because of all of the things that had happened earlier. And I was looking for a way to sort of deal with those things. Of course, not the right way to go, but it would take me many years to find running and realize that running was a better method for me to get through some of that past pain And it turned out I was actually okay at running as well, these long distance races further on.
I love how you say it turned out I'm okay. Because you're not, it's not just okay, but like being brilliant at it. I have so many follow up questions. First of all, what are the thoughts of your friend who made the bet with you now seeing that you're running through like, the deserts and the most extreme conditions and it all started with a bet where you probably had a few beers?
It was a bet after a few adult beverages, and my friend Dan, who I made the bet with, he looks at me now and he sort of takes responsibility for everything that's happened after the bet, of course. So he's very proud of course, where the journey's taken me. He wants another rematch because I beat him in the first bet, but that's never happened. But yeah, it's pretty incredible to think it was this drunken bet made at like 1 or 2 in the morning after I'd had way too many drinks, and there's no way I could run for a bus, let alone 13.1 miles. And here I was getting up the next day, forgetting I'd even made the bet. My wife told me, she said, "Hey, you made this stupid bet with Dan last night. You've got to go out and beat him in a half marathon race." And I only had about just over 3 months to train for it. So I got up and thought, I wonder how far I can run. And I thought I'll just go around the block. Well, I couldn't make it to the first corner of the block before being out of breath. And I realized then I was in pretty bad shape. Because I'd made this bet at the party, there was other people listening to us have this conversation. So they were all laughing at me when I made the bet because they realized, there's no way I could run 13.1 miles. But that was my sort of encouragement, and it gave me a bit of drive because I wanted to prove to all those people that I could do this. So I had something mentally then driving me to really want to get out there and train. So it's funny what can motivate you to get to the finish line of a race. And that was a really big point for me. And then, as I mentioned before, finishing the race was the first time in, I would probably say 30 years that I'd actually felt good about myself. I'd achieved something. I felt good about who I was, how I looked, of course, and just really the avenues that the running could open up for me was a really big difference in my life.
I love this transformation. And I love because it's such a big encouragement for people that it's never too late to change. And I think it's so great because you were such an extreme before that. The other extreme, as you said, you were overweight, you were drinking, you were eating, you couldn't even like run to catch the bus. And then like overnight, you changed your life. And it was probably, looking back, a sliding door moment for you, right?
Yeah, I think we all have those moments, don't we? And this was definitely one of those things for me that would take me on a completely different journey and path. And for everyone else that's out there listening to us, it doesn't need to be an ultra marathon or it doesn't need to be half marathon distance. I guess it's just making changes in all the things you do in life, and maybe they can take you on a new path as well. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I like to show people when I'm doing presentations is showing pictures of how big I was and showing the difference and transformation as to who I am now, because it's easy to look at me now and think, oh, he's an ultra marathon runner. It must always be easy for him, but it hasn't always been easy. And then I think people can connect with me on their own level. Maybe they've had a difficult life, difficult childhood like I had. Maybe they are overweight and want to make some changes. So they see the way forward for themselves as well.
I read online that you left home at the age of 14, and you already mentioned it was very early. Do you think running has helped you not just to like go a lot of the physical weight, but also of the mental and mental and emotional weight that you have been carrying with you for so many years because of the things you've experienced in life?
Yeah, and I think leaving home at that early age made me really resilient, able to overcome adversity, very sort of driven because no one else was there to help me. I was working in a gas station, putting myself through school. The struggle was real. So when I got into running and running longer distance races, I knew that I had a bit more mental strength than maybe some of the people around me because I'd been through a lot earlier in life, and I could really roll back to some of those feelings or emotions or thoughts to get me through the difficult points in a race. So very early on in my running ultra career, if you like, I would use a lot of that sort of negative mental energy to really drive me. And it worked. It made me really competitive. It made me really driven, but it also made me a little bit of an angry runner. I never felt like I was happy running. And it took me a long time to get to that process of feeling more happy about myself and happy about running and happy about not having to go out there and prove to people what I can do anymore. I felt for a very long time early on that I needed to go to these races, these extreme events, to prove to other people that I could do them. And that was the wrong way to think, of course.
Looking back, do you think what was it that you really wanted to prove? That you are capable of doing something, or that you are worthy of it, or was it also for proving yourself? And what I'm really curious, when running ultra marathons, did you also do it to feel something? Because often when we eat a lot and drink a lot and smoke a lot, it's a distraction from can be a distraction from our feelings. So when that was very excessive and when we stopped that, suddenly there are all these feelings. So I'm wondering, how did the running also come in with that? I know that's a very loaded question.
Well, I never really liked running. That was the funny thing. Even to this day, it's not my choice of sport to do or to watch. It just became something that was good for me. So that was a really funny thing about it is, I have to put myself through a lot of training or a lot of pain in a race to get the enjoyment out of it. And I have struggled with that a little bit in my whole running sort of career, if you like. So that's been different to me to get used to. I think it has at times been an element that has stopped me from, of course, going back to those previous vices. But also, I don't really find complete enjoyment always running as well. So, yeah, it's a very difficult sort of question to answer in that respect as to why I do it. It's good for me mentally and it's good for me physically.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really felt the joy of that, not until many years later.
What helped you to go from that place of anger and wanting, and also being outwardly focused, to drawing the attention inward and then also finding joy in the journey of running?
Well, running some of these races, I've run races across deserts, over mountains, in jungles, some of the most beautiful locations, even though they're most extreme locations in the world. There are moments during that I'm out there and I do take a moment to look and think, wow, I'm really lucky to be out here doing this. And I can see views that you would never see as a tourist. You go into locations deep in the middle of nowhere. So there are fantastic things that actually you reflect back on after a race and you think that was an amazing adventure. And I met some incredible people doing it as well. I guess sometimes throughout the journey through the race, and these races could be up to 7 days long, you really have to dig deep to get to the end of these races at times because you don't have family or friends or connection with the outer world when you're in the middle of the desert somewhere. So you have to find reasons why you want to be out there, and you need to stay positive and you need to enjoy the moments out there as much as you can, even though you might be physically struggling with it all or mentally struggling with it all. And of course, later on in my journey throughout all of these races, when of course Gobi the dog joins me, that becomes a real moment where I find myself in this little dog and find this connection with her, that actually I start to feel more happiness and joy around her and also being at these races. So I think, the answer is she was a really big point of my life of finding a little bit more happiness as to who I am as a person as well.
Can you please share the heartwarming, moving story and journey of you and Gobi for those who don't know it yet?
Well, in 2016, I was running a 7-day, 155-mile race across the Gobi Desert in China. This is also a self-sufficient race, so you have to carry your food and kit to survive the week in a pack on your back as well. The race provides you with water along the way, and at night time you sleep in tents that are provided. But everything else you have to carry. So all of your food, your sleeping bag, warm clothes, in temperatures in the Gobi Desert around 120, 125 degrees, and freezing cold temperatures at night. It snows a lot in the Gobi Desert because there's a big mountain range there where snow leopards live. So it's freezing cold at night. It's baking hot during the day. You're running in temperatures over 120 degrees, no breeze, no shade, really extreme race. And on that race, I was actually out there trying to win the race. And on day one, I start the race and I finish in third place. And on day two, a little dog decides to join me during the race, and we become best friends out there. So this little dog is like a Chihuahua Shih Tzu mix, just comes out of nowhere, starts running the race actually on day one with some other runners, joins me on day two of the race. Now, she runs 25 miles with me on day two through the desert, up and over big mountain range, through the sand. And she decides that she's going to stay with me for the rest of the week-long race. So we're actually out in some of this most difficult conditions, and I've now got this new best friend next to me. And I didn't really realize like where this friendship would take us. And she was very keen to be my friend, but I'm actually still this really focused runner that's out there trying to win the race. I'm very, sort of channeled and focused on nothing else but finishing in first place, that I didn't really notice the dog around me for the first day. But yeah, during that week-long race, we would become best friends. It would take a few more days for me to realize that, but by the end of the week-long race, I'd fallen in love with this little dog. And the race being 155 miles, she was out there for the whole week. She'd ran about 77 miles of the race. And it was just incredible to see this little dog being out there and choosing me out of all of the other runners that were there. So it was like a sign, she was there for me and I was there for her in the end as well.
What made you, because you fortunately decided to share this story with the world. It's now a New York Times bestseller, and you also turned it into various versions, including young readers editions, picture book. What made you take the time in between all the running to write that story?
Well, actually, I decided that I'm going to bring the dog home after the race. And now at this point in my life, I'm living in Edinburgh in Scotland, and the dog isn't allowed to get on the plane and travel home the next day with me. And she has to stay in China to have some blood work done, some tests done to make sure she doesn't have any diseases. It takes like 90 days for these tests to be done. So she stays in China with a lady who looks after her. She says, "Oh, I'm going to look after your dog for you. I'll take it to the vet. I'll get it tested." I fly back to Scotland. Now, as I'm back in Scotland, the story starts to go all around the world. It gets picked up, do a newspaper interview in the UK, and then it gets picked up by BBC, then it's CNN, then it's Fox, then it's ABC, where ESPN play of the day. So the story goes all around the world. And it's neat. It's like a 5 minutes of fame sort of thing. And I think that's really incredible. They're sharing the story of this little dog, run the race. Now she's going to have this wonderful new life with me in Scotland. Then the lady that's looking after Gobi rings me and she says, "I'm really sorry, your dog Gobi's gone missing and I don't know where she is. I can't look for her." And she hung up the phone basically. Now the lady lived up near the Gobi Desert in a big city of about 3 million people called Urumqi. And the dog's on the streets. No one's seen her. No one knows where she is. And I decided to fly back to China to find her. And that's really the sort of second twist of the plot, if you like, of finding Gobi. And, meeting in the race and running the race was one incredible adventure. And now I was found back in China looking for Gobi on this second adventure, trying to find her in this big city. So that's when the story really takes a lot more different twists and turns throughout the search for Gobi in that big city. So we search for Gobi. She's missing for, we think, about 6 weeks in total. We have hundreds of people looking through the streets, and we have a big search and volunteer team. And finally, we get a phone call to say, "Hey, we think we found your dog, Gobi." We'd just about given up hope. We're just packing up, basically. We're at the end of our tether looking for her. Didn't think it was going to be possible to find her. And suddenly someone rings and says, "Hey, we think we found her." So we go round to their house, and lo and behold, it is Gobi. And when she sees me, she comes running towards me, jumps up in my arms. She's so excited to see me again. And it was a really great moment to find her the second time after being in the desert, of course. And it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. We were very fortunate to find her, and unfortunately, she had been hit by a car, so she had a bad leg, needed an urgent operation on it. So I ended up staying in China for like another 4 months with Gobi before finally flying her home back to Scotland. So yeah, it's quite a journey. From the moment I saw her and met her in the race to getting her home was like 6 months later. And throughout that 6 month period, the story of Gobi went around the world on the news and social media virally 2 or 3 times. It was pretty incredible. So when I got Gobi back to the UK, by now I'd started receiving phone calls from a lot of the large publishers around the world saying, "Hey, we want you to write a book about this amazing story with your dog, Gobi." And it took me down this path of, writing a book and a picture book and a chapter book. And who would ever have thought going to that race, just where life would take me?
This is so incredible, and I love this story for so many reasons. I'm a firm believer that whatever is meant for us will not miss us. Obviously, we have to put ourselves out there, and we do need to move and take the action steps. But yeah, I just think what is meant for us will find us, and what is meant for you will not miss you. And so I just wanted to ask, your experience with Gobi, how did it shape your perspective on fate and also synchronicity in life?
Well, there's a really important part of the race that changes my life forever and Gobi's life forever, which is day 3 of the race. And on day 3 of the race, I'm actually still in 3rd place overall. I've still got a chance of winning the race. And I think to myself, excuse me, I'd like to try and take the lead of the race today. So as I'm running throughout day 3, the dog is near me, and first and second are always continually ahead of me. It's like I can never seem to catch them. I actually start to think maybe I won't take the lead of the race today, when suddenly I see first and second walking ahead of me, and it's 125 degrees. Maybe they've run out of water. Maybe they're struggling in the heat. I think to myself, oh, this is great. This is my chance to take the lead. And as I get up closer to them, suddenly we drop down this big hill, and all I see is this raging, rushing river of water ahead of me. Now, I'm in the desert, so at first I'm like, is that a mirage? Where's all this water come from? On day 2, we'd cross the mountain range that has the snow up there, and the snow leopards live up there. That melts, of course, during the day. So it creates like floods of water everywhere. So I go down into this water. Now, this crossing's about the size of a football field in length. I'm over 6 foot, so it's up to my waist in height. It's rushing strongly. It's freezing cold from the snow melt. And as I go down into the water, first and second are now, just ahead of me. This is my chance to like catch up to them. And as I go through the water, I get up closer to them, and then I hear barking, yelping, and whining behind me. And I look at first and second to see if they've heard it. The water's rushing strongly, so maybe they don't hear it because they continue on. I continue on too because I'm about to take the lead of the race, and that's what I'm out there to do. Then the barking, yelping, and whining gets even louder. So I look at first and second again. I know they would have heard it, but they're not stopping. They know I'm right there. I'm about to take the lead, so they keep going. I decide to stop, and I look back to see the dog running up and down the side of the water. She knows if she goes into there, she's going to get washed away. She's going to drown. She's going to die. So now I'm left thinking, like, what am I going to do? Do I take the lead of the race, or do I go back and help the dog? And in an instant, I find myself going back to help the dog. First and second don't stop, they continue on. And I'm now going back against everything that I'm out there to do to go and help this dog. So I make my way all the way back through the water. As I'm going back through the water, I start thinking to myself, oh, what if this dog bites me? What if it's got rabies? I mean, she's not my dog. I don't know anything about this dog. Maybe she doesn't like to be picked up, right? So then I think, oh, how am I going to pick her up? So I kneel down, I pick her up, and I kind of keep her out at arm's length and try and go across the water with her out wide so she doesn't bite me. But as I'm going across the water, of course, she doesn't bite me. She sort of has this way of nuzzling up into my arms. And I get all the way through the water with her, and I look back down at her, and she's just staring at me. She has these big brown eyes, and she's just staring at me, and it's like the moment where I really connect with her. And I think to myself, why am I doing this? I mean, I love dogs, I love animals, I'm kind animals, but it goes against everything I'm there to do. Now I'm going back, I help the dog, and I'm like looking at her thinking, wow, this is an incredible moment. She's in my arms staring at me. She's looking at me like, I often joke, like if she could talk, she'd say something like, geez, I love you. You're the best person ever. Thanks for coming to pick me up. And I connect with her at that moment because I see myself in the dog. I see that boy on the streets with nobody helping, nobody loving on me. And this dog, no one loves this dog. No one cares about this dog. We don't know why she was in the desert in the first place, what she was doing out there. And here are these two lost souls coming together in the middle of nowhere in the Gobi Desert. And it was that life-changing moment. If I don't go back, pick the dog up, I'm not finishing the race with her. The video and the picture of us finishing the race together goes all around the world. I don't write a book. I don't talk to you today. It's just amazing. That is the one thing that I always like to say to everyone, but especially children, is like, you never know where life can take you by just a simple act of being kind. And that was my sort of moment of just being kind to go and help the dog across the water. And here it takes me on this completely different path in life.
It made me tear up when you said, like you were so close to taking the lead. And obviously that's what you had been training for. That's what you were there for. And you then turned around and got Gobi. And I actually wrote down a proverb which says, if you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run together. And I think that's something that beautifully summarizes your journey. And it's something that can be applied for all of us, not just for the running, but for our personal life, for our professional life, to allow ourselves to do it together.
Yes. And as that child that's on the streets of that small country town in Australia, working the gas station, putting myself through school, I was, of course, on my own, very individual, didn't trust anyone, didn't want to let go and give myself to other people. It took me a very long time. And, my wife and I have been together like 26 years now, and she was one of the first people that I would open up to, of course. But it took a long time for me throughout, even my 20s and 30s, even being with my wife in a work situation, I would find myself sometimes still very individual, still like a lone wolf, still always just thinking of myself instead of the team or the business, worried about my own results, but not really worried about anyone else's. So I think you're right. I think that's, coming through that with Gobi, of course, made me realize just how great people can be as well. If you look at the search and volunteer aspect later on, hundreds of people come to search for Gobi. They don't know me. They've never seen the dog before. And here they were, out of the kindness of their hearts, helping me in this massive city in northwest China. And you start to realize then exactly that. I could never have found Gobi on my own. I didn't find her. All of these wonderful people found her. And when we come together as a team, or we come together as a community or as a group, we can really achieve like awesome, wonderful things. And we always have to be reminded, I guess, of that, or remember that, because we are human beings are pretty awesome as well.
And it comes back to what you said, that one act of kindness. And when I look at the ripple effect, you turning around was the ripple effect for journalists being connected to it, loving the story, being moved by it, then hundreds of volunteers helping you. Like, I think that that act of kindness has just, it's amazing how it has traveled and still continues to travel and will continue in the future. Like, how does this make you feel when you think about that there's one moment turning around, just you planted a seed of kindness that grew into a woods of kindness?
One of the best bits of feedback that we receive is like people that have gone down to their rescue shelter, maybe taken a dog home. They've maybe taken some blankets or some food down, or they've seen a dog that's on the streets and gone and helped it, and all because they've heard Gobi's story, and it's made them realize that there are lots of animals out there that need help as well. So for me, that's always the great sort of longevity of it and paying it forward, is using Gobi's story and Gobi's name, if you like, to be able to help other animals in need. So we do lots of charity work around that as well, raising money and awareness for shelters as well. So, that's probably one of the great elements of it. I do speaking events in schools. So I do lots of elementary schools here in the United States. And that's when I really sort of go back to the kindness and just where life can take you with kindness, and how easy it is just to be kind to others, be kind to animals as well. And there's so many great elements of the story, friendship, teamwork, the kindness, of course, but also the overcoming adversity, being resilient, and being there for your friend Gobi as well. That it's great for the students and the teachers to be able to connect with that story as well.
You shared on your website, one act of kindness changed my life. And it's so beautiful because it's a picture of you and Gobi. What's your definition of kindness? And also, what advice would you have for people that want to spread more kindness, whether it's in animal welfare or even in their own life? Because I do think like it starts with being kind to ourselves, and because then we can, our cup is overflowing, and then it basically is inspiring others, and that kindness travels.
I think through my journey, at least, like finding Gobi, having that experience with her, writing the book was a real moment for me. Like going through the process of writing the book, I got to write down those first drafts and write down a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of things that I'd had in my, inside of me, like in the basement, if you like. And it brought out like all of these emotions. And throughout the process of writing the book, I got through the drafts, and the drafts changed because, it was like, in the first draft's probably angry, got all of this issues. The next draft's a little bit softer. The next draft to become the book it is today. And that's my life as well. Like angry teen, upset about the world, to becoming a more happier person as well. So for me, like writing the book was a real moment of reflection and a real moment for me to let go of a lot of things as well. So then I could start to become kinder, a better person, happier. And throughout this story with Gobi, that has really enabled me to find more kindness within myself. And kindness can be just a simple thing as to giving someone a smile or saying hello to someone, just talking to someone. It doesn't have to be anything really outrageous like donations or money or I think, sometimes I'm walking with Gobi in a city somewhere, and it might be like 5 o'clock in the evening. You've got all the workers coming out from their offices. They're walking along and they see Gobi walking along, and I can see them listening to some music or a podcast or something. And they're looking sort of down, they're looking down, and they see Gobi, and they see the smile that she has on her face when she walks. It's such a cute little thing that they now have a smile on their face. And I see them walking off then with a bit of a smile, and I think, well, Gobi's done a good deed for the day. She's put a smile on someone else's face just by smiling. So, kindness can be just the easiest, smallest thing in the world. And I think we just have to remember to try and pass it on as much as we can.
And also, when it comes to kindness, being kind without seeing the fruits of our kindness. Because I love your example. It might be in that moment that whoever came out of the office was super stressed, saw Gobi, it inspired him to be happier, but maybe outwardly couldn't show it in that moment because he's still on like running like high, thinking about all the things the boss said and the partners and whatever they need to work on. But then later on in that evening, just right before bed, this person might have had again the picture in front of their eye of Gobi, and it made them fall asleep with a smile. So I think it's so important when we practice kindness and give the gift of kindness to ourselves and to others, just knowing, first of all, nothing is too small. I think that's a very important thing. Nothing is too small. And also that sometimes it might take time for the fruit to be harvested or to be seen. I was at church on Sunday, and the priest said something so beautiful because it was Father's Day. And I mean, he kind of in between the lines said, we all celebrate our mothers, like how much, like sometimes difficult even to like, what do we get our dad for Father's Day? It's like, it's a little different priority. But he said his mom was just so involved in their faith and everything they did. And the father just kind of went along with it. But he said one day when they were praying, they always closed their eyes. And he said, I was young, but I really wanted to see what others are doing. So he just like squinted his eyes a little bit to see. And he saw his dad tapping his heart. And then later on, he asked his dad, he's like, why are you tapping your heart? And he said, well, I'm asking God to give me more life every day. And he said, his dad might not have influenced his faith through everyday actions, but that very one moment was a little seed that he has planted on his path. And no seed is too small to grow into an oak later on. And I think that's just such a great example when it comes to kindness, having this analogy.
Yeah, well, when I go back and pick Gobi up and carry her across the water, like I'm just doing that out of kindness to help the dog cross the water.
Mm-hmm.
She knows if she goes into the water, it's rushing so much, she's going to drown, she's going to die. So I'm just doing the right thing. I think, right, I'll go back, pick her up across the water. That's the life-changing moment when I look at her and realize, hey, here's this connection and bond. Here's me and this little dog, but I don't know where that's all going. I put her down over the other side of the river and I continue running after first and second. But that is the moment when I connect with the dog. She's already connected with me. And that's the moment, of course, that leads me to then look up for the dog for the rest of the week and then finish the race with the dog in my arms. And that video goes all around the world. So when
Mm-hmm.
I go back and carry across the river, I'm not thinking, oh, there's a story in this, there's a book deal in this, there's a there's a new career here. Like it's done in seconds. I'm in the middle of a race, so it's amazing just where it can take you, and just by one act of kindness, it's a really small gesture, right? In some ways, to go back and just help the dog. It's probably more of a gesture because I'm at the front of the field. If it was one of the other
Mm-hmm.
runners further back, well, they're probably going to have the time. They're going to go, oh, okay, I'll help the dog. For me, because I'm out there competing, it's less of an option for me to really do. But yeah, it's a simple little thing, but it goes so far, as you say.
One of the many gifts that Gobi has given you, I'm going to read that. You said, finding Gobi was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but her finding me was one of the best. Gobi coming into my life has changed both of our lives forever. It's erased some of those bad childhood memories, and it's been an incredible experience. As I ran in the Gobi Desert, I was no longer running to get away from my past. I was running towards my future. I was running with hope and not sorrow. And I was so deeply moved when I read that because it's so beautiful to see and also hear and feel how Gobi's presence has been such a catalyst in your life and helping you redefine your relationship with running, with your past, ultimately with yourself. Can we talk a little bit more about this?
We could, but actually the volume went off then. Sorry.
Oh, well, do you want me to repeat all of it?
Yes, yes. Sorry, it literally just cut out. I couldn't see you, or the voice went. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely, no problem. So you wrote, and I absolutely love that. Finding Gobi was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but her finding me was one of the best. Gobi coming into my life has changed both of our lives forever. It's erased some of those bad childhood memories, and it's been an incredible experience. And you also wrote, as I ran in the Gobi Desert, I was no longer running to get away from my past, but I was running towards my future. And I was running with hope, not sorrow. And I was so deeply moved by this because I could not just hear and see, but also feel what an amazing catalyst and gift Gobi's presence has been for your life to heal not just your relationship with running, but with your past and also with yourself. Could we talk a little bit more about this, please?
yeah. I guess as I sort of mentioned, writing the book was a big sort of moment for me to be able to forgive and forget those things in the past, and to say the past is done now, and to more look forward to the great life and journey ahead with Gobi. That was the first sort of thoughts of that, and to where life and this journey could take us both as well. And having sort of looked back to pick Gobi up, I had to look back on life to write the book, but then I had to keep moving forward as I did with Gobi across the water as well. So for me, that was a really big moment. And I didn't realize just how difficult writing the book and sharing some of these moments would be throughout the process of the book. And but I wanted to share my childhood and some of those moments to give people an understanding of the life that I had and the reason that I go back and help the dog and the reason that I connect with the dog at that moment as well, and just to how important she is and how big a moment of my life she has become. So I never would have thought in a million years just where this whole story would take us both. But yeah, that is a really beautiful moment, is, or thought also is like, did I find Gobi or did she find me? Not only once in the desert, but also the second time as well. And I think that just shows like we're meant to be together. And, it's been
Mm-hmm.
nearly 8 years now that Gobi and I have been together, and we've had some incredible adventures and journeys and time together since. And yeah, it's been an amazing chapter, that's for sure.
Has she joined you for another race?
She didn't actually run any more races with me, no more ultramarathons. She retired from long distance running after that. She was like, that's enough for me, thanks. I've found my person in life, I'm done. She would do some smaller races. Gobi's actually the first dog to, and only dog to have ever run in the Paris Marathon. And she's also run in the Milan Marathon. And she's run a 10-kilometer race in Slovenia, and she's done some 5-kilometer races with my wife as well. Gobi still loves to run. She loves to still have an adventure, but she's going to be 10 years old this year, so she's a little bit older now, and we don't make her run. She just prefers to do leisurely activities and strolls. Yeah.
It's so funny. She retired. I absolutely love that.
Well, having her out there running that race with me was also good because you are out there on your own. You don't have connection with the outer world whilst you're out there for the week. So I had a bit of an extra benefit having Gobi next to me because it was someone I could talk to, someone I could pat, someone I could just sort of look
Mm-hmm.
down at when I'm struggling running, and see her running next to me, and she's sort of running along fast and got a smile on her face, and it was like making it easier for me. So yeah, that was great to have a pal like Gobi out there.
How do you believe that the animal human bond can help us reach our full potential?
I think, you know, and aren't animals just the best thing ever? I mean, we've We love cats. We love dogs. They're both unique animals. They're both great. And if you're having a really bad day, for example, you you come home and your dog's there for you. First thing you see, it's jumping around the house. It's so excited to see you, and it's you forget about life, don't you, when you're with your animals? And I think that's something that we have to remember is there's more to life than always being super busy with work or getting bogged down with a lot of things that maybe we don't really need to. Because when you go back to seeing your dog, they sort of strip all those things away. That brings it back down to
Hmm.
just the basics in life. And it's like, for them, it's just like they're so happy to see you. They don't care what day you've had. They just want to make your day better now. And so I think animals are great to have around, and they really do fill your house with joy and happiness, and they're fun to have around, aren't they? They're great characters as well.
Oh, I always say an animal turns a house into a home. And I think that's the way it
Absolutely.
really describe what is happening, all the joy and the fun. And it's just so incredible. I also like same with our dog. Even if I'm just going to the bathroom, when I come back, he's like so excited. He's like, "Mommy, you're back. I'm just so excited. I'm loving life." And whenever I'm having a bad moment, and when he's overly excited, as he always is, I'm like, yeah, I have no reason to be mad or to be sad or to be frustrated with life, because Felix is just showing me and reminding me, hey, we have each other. Life is great. Like, we are safe. What is there to be sad about, you know? And it's just, and I think that's one of the many gifts that animals give us, is reminding us of the beauty of life.
Absolutely. Dial it back a little bit. Enjoy every moment. I'm lucky. I get to spend
Hmm.
every day with Gobi. So, going to schools or going to corporate events, sharing my story with Gobi, sharing Gobi's story, and having Gobi next to me is pretty awesome. So I'm very lucky. I get to. I often say, I get to spend all day with my best friend and my wife too. So it's not so bad. Yeah.
I love the order.
Yeah. Thankfully, she's not here right now listening to me have this conversation, so she changes the order around. Yeah.
how how has the relationship with Gobi positively shaped your relationship with your wife?
Actually, the first time Gobi and Lucia met, there's a picture of us that I took at the airport, and it's like a selfie. Gobi's in my arms, Lucia's next to me, and Gobi's actually sort of looks like with her paws, she's pushing Lucia away in the picture, and she's got this really angry sort of eye. And I think there's a bit of jealousy there. So I think that they both had to get used to each other. But it was
Hmm.
really quick. Like, Gobi just fell in love with Lucia straight away. And she was over Lucia like all the time, like snuggling up to us. And Lucia would say, "Look, I'm better friends with Gobi than you are." That's what she thinks. So it's great that we have this sort of family bond, and we have our cat Lara as well. And Lara and Gobi, of course, had to get used to each other. And that's unique because our cat Lara is an indoor cat, a ragdoll cat. So she'd never been outside before. She'd never seen a dog before. So the day I brought Gobi home, who's a stray dog from the desert who doesn't particularly like cats, was, of course, probably a bigger challenge than actually getting Lucia and Gobi together. So that was fun to see Gobi sort of have to adapt to having a cat sister and be pretty sweet with her most of the time. So I think it really bonded the four of us together, if you like, and it made us happier. It made us more complete. We don't have children, and I think it really changed in so many different ways, I guess, just through the animals, just through more happiness, just through more joy, just becoming better people, I think, because of Gobi and through this journey as well. So, yeah, there's probably many more things that I haven't really sat down and thought about those little changes, but they're probably more than you think through this. Yeah.
Mm. I love how you mentioned you had an indoor cat and you brought like the most stray dog ever from another continent, and that they are now bonding. What do you think has helped them? Or let me rephrase. What do you think you have actively done that really helped them to bond?
I think we're very sort of calm people. We're very um, placid or well natured, if you like. So our cat's very sort of relaxed and very chilled. So for her, she's like probably very open. And when the dog comes in, she's not running away hiding. She's kind of like thinking, well, what is this? What is that thing? And the cat wanted to be more friends with the dog than the other way around. So that was good that there was at least one way action, and then it was more to show Gobi that hey, this was okay, that she could share, of course, with Lucia, and now she could share again with Lara the cat. So she doesn't still like any other cats, Gobi, but she does love Lara, so that's great.
I love your family. Like it sounds so whole. And I think it's so beautiful that it took you to change your life upside down, to not just run a half marathon, but ultra marathons, running through the desert, following your heart rather than your goal in a very pivotal moment, and then making anything possible to find that dog, bringing her back, because it's like all of that, you know? And it's just so beautiful to see how much we get rewarded in our hearts and in our lives when we have the courage to follow our heart.
Yeah, and that's where life can take you as well, on a completely different journey, on a completely different path, by following that, or by following your instincts, or taking that sliding door moment. And the whole thing is like, you don't need to go out and do an ultra marathon to achieve this. It can be
Mm-hmm.
just the simple ways in life that you look at and do differently, or change, or put a smile on your face and be a different person today than you were yesterday. It's so easy to do, and it can just make such a big difference to your own life, but to other people's lives as well. And for me, that's the sort of learning that I've had throughout this whole experience as well. When I first go to that race in the Gobi Desert, I don't really talk to anyone else there. I'm really focused on nothing else but winning. And in the end, winning doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what place you come in the race. It's all about the journey, and it's all about sharing it with others. It's all about having fun and, yeah, living life, isn't it? And that's, Gobi now is living life, loving life, and living it to the fullest. And yeah, I mean, it's a gift to be alive and to be here. And I think sometimes we might even forget that. Might be difficult moments in life when you start to think, hey, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I've had enough. But actually, there could be something really amazing around the corner as well. Like if you'd have told me as that 13, 14-year-old boy on the streets, I'd have a New York Times best-selling books in 24 languages around the world. Hollywood's like looking at options to maybe make a movie out of it. It's like, wow, I'd never have believed that. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm 49 years old now. So what is that? 35 years ago. If you'd have told me that, there's no way that would ever happen to me. 35 years later of up and down roller coaster ride, that's life.
Dion, you mentioned something that's, I think, so important to elaborate on. It's about the journey. And I think in our society, especially high performers, we are very goal oriented, and it's all about winning and being faster and more efficient, and multitasking. And whilst I think it's important to have a goal because we need a harbor to sail into, it's equally important to focus on the journey and to focus on our intentions and how we feel along the way. I remember many years ago, I went hiking, like just very casually, not like running. And, you walk walk and hike up the mountain for hours and hours. And then you're on top of the mountain and you're there for like 5-10 minutes. And then you walk down again. And I'll never forget that moment when I thought about it. I was like, I feel like that's how we sometimes tend to live our life. We work hard, we struggle, we grind, we hike. And then when we are where we want to be or where we had been working towards, we're there for a second and like recharge a little bit and eat and drink. And then we go again to the next place. So what advice do you have for us ambitious people to find that sweet spot between balance and enjoyment of the journey?
Well, yesterday, actually, I'm here in Alaska at the moment. Yesterday, I went up on this climb, and it was about 5,000 feet. And it took forever to get to the climb, as you said. It took hours and hours and hours. Difficult single track at places I was hands and knees and climbing up. Felt like I was against the edge of the cliff. And I'm not very good with heights. Like, I'm scared of heights. So for me, that is still a challenge, right? And the further I can go up, the further I can conquer something, the more confident, more driven I am to then, of course, conquer the next mountain or the next thing in life. And here I was yesterday with some people around me that were like having no problems with the heights whatsoever, but they actually helped me get through to the point where there was this fantastic view, but it was really close to the cliff edge there. And for me, like, I couldn't have done that on my own. So back to what we were saying earlier, like, you don't have to do everything on your own, and it's better with a group of people, having the right positive people around you, the people that are willing to support you no matter what in life. And that was my achievement yesterday, was actually getting to this edge of this mountain, having a quick look before I retreated and went back down the mountain. But when you finish, you can reflect back on that and think, well, that wasn't so bad, was it? That wasn't so difficult. Maybe I can do the next challenge in life and take that forward as well, with the positivity, right? With the happiness that you've achieved something, with the feeling of, yeah, you know what, I can do this. So it's like simple little steps along the way. It doesn't have to be the big mountain, or it doesn't have to be the big ultra marathon. It's just like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's like just breaking things down to these smaller moments, ticking them off along the way, and remembering and reflecting on that too. You know, very often I'll go to these races, I'll finish them, and won't take the time to reflect, won't take the time to sort of think, what an achievement that was, because I'm already thinking about the next race or the next thing in life. And I think we should also take time to reflect and to realize we've all achieved really great things, no matter what it is in life and business. So I think when you reflect, you realize, actually, I'm a pretty incredible person, and we're all incredible people.
Yeah, reflection and introspection is so important. And I think it's also important not just to do it when we achieved something or when we finished a project or a race or whatever it is, but on a daily basis. And that it's not actually a matter of achievement as, wow, I got something done. But it can also, it's not just the tasks that we tick. It can also be, oh, today I managed to face my fear of heights, which you just mentioned. Or today I managed to rest without feeling guilty. You know, it can be so many things that we can say, wow, that's where I allowed myself to grow today. That's where I showed up for myself. It could be something simple like, oh, I had a conversation that was difficult for me, whereas 1 year ago, I would have never had the courage to have it. So I think it's so important to celebrate those little steps. And this actually brings me to my next question. We were already talking earlier about the multi-stage races that are 155 miles and also require you to be self-sufficient. And I read that I think your very first one, you didn't finish. Is that correct?
That
Or
is
one of them?
no, look, yeah, and I was just going to say that to your point as well, is like, yeah, sometimes reflection is better when you don't finish something. in my case, might be not finishing a race. So it's like reflecting back to say, well, what didn't I do right? Or what were the learnings from it? What can I do differently? And then that gives you a better plan and platform to achieve going forward. And if you take that through to even a life or a business aspect, there's many different things that we don't achieve along the way, and it like might not be the right time to do that, or it might be that we need to take a different path with an idea that we have for business. So yeah, for me, that was you can feel really down about not finishing a race, for example, but actually you can turn it around and use it to become an even better athlete, more driven, when you find out just who you are and just how to overcome those points, or I want to say weaknesses, but the things that you could do differently make you achieve later on in the future. So yeah, I think that's a really important factor, is to also reflect on the positives, but reflect on the things that maybe didn't go so well, but don't get too bogged down in them.
One thing I do want to point out, I read that this experience of that particular race led you to nearly give up running altogether. What helped you to turn your mental outlook and your state around and have your thoughts fight for you rather than against you? And not just that, like coming back to running and then also participating again in the race, in the next race, and finishing it, because it's not just saying yes again to running and you go like for 10Ks on a Sunday. No, in your case, you have a huge amount of mental resilience that you need to bring up. Can you talk us through that journey and process?
I think that was really just more about learning about myself and what I could achieve, and also learning about having to a reason or a why as to why I'm out there doing these races. Like early on, I found myself doing these races because my wife was wanting to go and do them. I started running a little bit further and joined her in something that she was already doing. So I never really had that strong why. As I mentioned before, like I'm not particularly, didn't find the enjoyment in running, especially early on. Was running as a negative sort of runner, using those past experiences driving me along. So it took me a long time to become a lot happier in the running aspect, but also it took me a while to realize I needed more than that to get to the finish line. So I needed a reason as to why. And some of the early races I did, I actually ran for charity. And when I'd be running along and thinking, oh, it's a week-long race, I'm out here forever, it's terrible, it's hot, I'm run out of water, I'd think back to all of the people that were cheering me on, or maybe they donated money. And I thought to myself, I don't want to let them down. This is for a really great cause that I'm running. And that was a reason for me then to sort of pick myself up and to go again. And if we have that, not only in running but in life, a really strong why as to why we're doing what we're doing out there, I think it gives us more purpose. And once I found more purpose in the running, then I could continue on and start to run further and further and further. And of course, there's still times when I'm out there running these races that I think, oh, why don't I just go to the Caribbean on holidays? It would have been a lot more fun. But, those things, of course, they're fun, but you never really reflect back too often on a holiday as you do for such an achievement of being out in a week-long race and having pushed yourself through all of those physical and mental limits to get to the finish line. And then as you're out there running those races, you have time to reflect and to think on your own life, how you can change the way you do things, how you can change the person you are. Maybe you want to stop doing things that you do in the workplace, or as a leader, you want to be a better leader. And so when I used to go out there running, I'd start to think, oh yeah, when I go back to work, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to start doing that. And it would create more positivity within me. So that was a really big sort of moment also then to realize actually being out here in this space was good for me to be able to change things going forward as well.
You mentioned earlier that you are blessing a lot of kids at elementary school with your knowledge and your experience. I'm wondering, what are you teaching them about finding their why? And the reason why I'm asking this is not just to inspire the parents in our podcast for their kids, but I think sometimes when we break it down to the most simple definition and inspiration, it can travel even further.
One of the best parts of going and sharing the story in a school is actually talking them through the story, but getting to day 3, the moment I go back to pick Gobi up, carry her across the water, and actually stop in the water, and I decide, right, am I going to go back or do I take the lead of the race? But at this point, if I'm in an elementary school, I actually ask the kids, like, what would you do? What's your choice? And 99% of them want to go back and help the dog, and that's great. But the question is, like, why do you want to help the dog? And I get some great responses. Well, you go back, you get the dog, you get a free dog for life. Or it might be, of course, it's the kind thing to do. I don't want the dog to fall in the water and to drown and to die. Or it might be like, the best one is when I hear the responses, winning isn't everything. You can win a race any day of the week. And if I'd have gone on and won that race, I wouldn't be here talking to you today because I wouldn't have the dog with me. So it's like getting them connected with the story is one thing. It's a completely different story to them running in the desert. It's like, what is this? This is crazy. But I have a cute dog who's my sidekick at these events as well. So then they start to see the bond and connection that I have with the animal and the kindness and the aspects around that. But I talk them through the story and I get them involved, asking them questions along the way as to what they would do and how their decisions change who they are as people as well. And then at the end, I get them to reflect on the story and say, hey, what did you learn from this story? And, it's usually about kindness, teamwork, friendship, looking after each other, being there for each other, being resilient, pushing yourself through the limits, overcoming more than you think you can. And when kids are coming up with this themselves in an elementary school or a middle school or in a high school, like I do all sorts of speaking events, that's when you've really connected with them, and that's when you've given them some food for thought going forward as well. And they might have learned some things along the way because I talk about deserts of the world, I talk about different animals, I talk about different locations, talk about China, I talk about living in Australia. So they learn more about other countries as well without even really knowing it. It's put through in a really fun environment. So they go away thinking, hey, that was pretty neat, got to see a cute dog too.
I love that. And what was one of the most memorable answers you have received from, or comments you've received from one of the kids?
Probably one of the funniest questions I ever had was, as you're running the race through the desert and the dog's with you, did you pick up Gobi's poop? What did you do while you were out there? Did you do the right thing? It's like, how do I answer this? We're in the desert. Of course I didn't pick the poop up. We're in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have any dog bags with me, but so I forget how I answered it, but I probably said yes, I did pick it up just to make sure they picked up their own dog poop. But they'll ask the most random things at times, but that one usually sticks with me.
This is so funny. What's also funny, probably not so much for you, but I did laugh when I read that. So in order to train for hot weather runs, you turned your spare room into a heat chamber, and you said, I close the door, seal the windows, and run for hours at times whilst watching YouTube and listening to music. My heating bill, this is the really funny part, my heating bill is astronomical before a race, but I am sure my neighbors love the heat coming through the ceiling during winter. And I thought that was hilarious. It really made me crack up.
They have got free heating for life when I was doing that upstairs in my apartment in Edinburgh in Scotland. It probably would look really weird too, because if that flowed all the way up, you'd have like snow on all of the other roofs, and on this house you'd be seeing there's no snow on that roof there. So the police might be flying around in a helicopter thinking, what's actually going on in that house? Maybe they're growing something else. Then
Yeah, I
there's
was
a bit
just
more heat
about to
lamps.
say.
Yeah.
Um, you're clearly good at pushing beyond your limits and also thriving in survival mode. How do you balance the intensity of your profession with listening to your body and allowing yourself to rest and also finding a sense of comfort in just being?
I think with what I do is, you're pushing yourself to the limits. You know when you're pushing yourself over the limits. And it's been comfortable now to know that actually I don't need to go to those over the limit stages. But actually, early on in my running, these races, I actually would have pushed myself too far. I have pushed myself too far in points. Talk about in the book, at one point I'm peeing blood because I pushed myself too far, and it starts to become really dangerous out there doing that. And, unfortunately, people do die during these races, and it becomes, an extreme event if you take it too far. But you can run out of water, you can struggle, you can maybe have some heart issues out there, and life changes in an instant. You've got to take risks out there. You've got to take risks to get further within the race or within life. And I guess nothing's ever really guaranteed, is it? But if you don't go and have that experience, you don't know where you can go next as well. Later on, though, the more I sort of mellowed with that, the more I've become more comfortable just being me as a runner, achieving the result that I achieved. Perhaps Gobi softened a lot of that in me as well, to realize after the Gobi race, I actually took a little bit of time to get back into running after the Gobi story, because I didn't find I had that desire to go out there and beat myself up in a race anymore. As I mentioned, a lot happier, changed a lot of things about who I am. So then when I did get back into running, it's been selective. I don't run as much as I used to now, and I do it because I want to do it now, and that makes me much more happier as well. But there's also moments when I'm out there doing these races and I take that back into life as well. Like I'll be out there and it'll be a really difficult day. So then if I find myself in the grocery store and I'm stuck behind 10 people, 12 people in Walmart, all paying with, pennies, and it's taking forever, I think to myself, I don't need to get mad. I don't need to get angry. I don't need to huff and puff or sigh about it, because I've been through more difficult times than being in a Walmart waiting to get through the grocer. So it's funny how sometimes I just reflect back on those moments and think, okay, this isn't a big deal, life's not so bad after all. But I guess the journey of running really did change a lot of those aspects within me as well, making me, I guess, not willing to sacrifice myself to win a race, which in the beginning of my career, that's what I was really willing to do, because I thought, well, no one else really cares about me, so why should I care about myself? And now I do care about myself.
It just really hit me what you said. No one else really cares about me. Why should I care about myself? And I want to elaborate a little bit on this, because I think a lot of people out there, for whatever reason, whether it was for the parents, the grandparents, the neighbors, the teachers, or kids at school, didn't feel worthy of love, of belonging, of attention, of kindness when they were young. And they kept continuing having this belief inside themselves. And that leads to many, many, many things in life, whether it's the kind of partner we attract, how we treat our bodies, what we think about ourselves, how much we allow ourselves to celebrate life and to be proud of ourselves. What inspirational thought would you have for someone that not yet feels that worthy of love, whether it's from themselves and from others? Because you are a real example that it is possible to turn it around regardless of what we had been through in life?
That's a great question. I think, yeah, of course, everyone needs to find their own way. And yeah, it's a good question. How do you go about that? You always feel down, or you always feel that the world's against you. For me, like, I was always so self-driven, and like I said earlier about being a lone wolf, that was a real thing for me. And it took me ages, like years and years and years, to develop out of that. And even when I'd work in business within teams, I'd be just still that lone wolf. And I guess I mean, my wife is a really big part of me changing before, many years before Gobi, of course, and becoming more open and a better person. And I think it's probably just having conversations with people, isn't it? It's probably stepping outside the realm of the conversations that you're having now. Maybe it's finding new people to be around. And, you know, like yesterday when I went up the mountain in Alaska, and I've got these people around me that they encouraged me to get to the top of this. They gave me their trust and security that, yeah, we can get to the last part and you can see this beautiful view that we're all seeing. But without them, I wouldn't have done that. So, yeah, if you don't have the right people around you, you have to really break free from them as well and change. And you have to say goodbye to people sometimes, don't you? And close the chapter on that book and move on as well to the next one. But it's having the strength to do that, right? And you've got to have that within yourself. And then I guess you've got to have a bit of a reason as to why you want that to be. And everyone's got to find their own why.
I love how you continuously throughout our conversation brought up a strong why, because it's our fuel. It's what keeps us moving. It's what feeds our fire, our joy in life. And I call it purpose. And I think what gets us out of bed in the morning and what makes us happy, and I'm not saying 24/7, but that just is this drive throughout life, is a purpose. And a purpose for ourselves in our personal life and our professional life. And recently I talked to someone, she's like, yeah, but how do I find my purpose? Or in your case, how do I find the why? And I said, finding the purpose starts with the question, what makes me feel alive?
Yeah. I mean, I've been in a situation previously where I came out of school with pretty poor grades, as you could imagine, working in a gas station, trying to put myself through school. My grades weren't the best. I ended up working in a meat factory, like a slaughterhouse, an abattoir, for like 3 years. Probably one of the most, I guess, downward sort of jobs that you could think. Not a great job. No one wants to go and work in a meat factory. And here I was, like, spending 3 years of my life there, and like 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going anywhere in life. I'm going to be stuck here forever. And I used to date a girl that her father had worked in this meat factory for like 50 years. He'd been there 50 years. And I thought to myself, that's going to be me. I'm destined to stay here in this horrible place forever. And actually what I started to do was started to think, how can I break free from this? Like, I needed the money. Got no money. I need the money to survive. How do I start to get forward though? So I started to put a little bit of money away each week as I'd go to work, and week in, week out, I'd try and save something. And I wasn't saving for a fancy car or anything. I was saving to be able to have enough money to be able to go to start a college course, so I could pay for the college course, leave the job, go back to working in a gas station, go to the college course as well, and try and, build my career or life going forward in a different direction. But to take those risks, to take those steps, like, I didn't know if I could do this as well. And then I'd have all of these other people around me that when I said I'm leaving this meat factory, they were all like, you'll be back. You won't last. You won't survive. Mm-hmm. You won't survive out there. And, that was 30 odd years ago now, 35 years ago. And I'd never been back to that town, never been back to working in that meat factory because I believed in myself. And I didn't have any real right to believe in myself that life would take me where it would, but I also backed myself. No one else is going to do that for you. Then I thought, well, I'm going to give myself a chance and see if it will take me somewhere else. Maybe I'll end up back in the meat factory. Well, if I don't give it a go, I'm never going to know. So that was for me really the sort of start to get myself out of this mess that I was in. And maybe, listeners out there are in the same sort of conundrum, but you've got to take your life in a different journey. You've got to be responsible and proactive for yourself as well. You can't expect other people to be there doing it for you. Doesn't really work like that, I guess. And yeah, those simple things made me go off and do that college course. And then I went on to go into university and take my life in a different direction.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And I want to once more repeat this for the audience. Be proactive for yourself. And I loved what you said. You believed in yourself, even if you didn't really have a reason yet to believe in yourself. But I think the biggest reason we have to believe in ourselves because we are worthy of it. We are worthy of believing in ourselves. And your journey from an early age on, everything you just shared up until now is a testimony. What happens when we believe in ourselves, and that also at some point we get rewarded with people that believe in us.
And it just made me think, part of that journey that you have, or that those experiences you have, like they're not always the great experiences, of course, make you who you are later on in life as well.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been through that childhood. I hadn't been through the, being there for myself, having to put myself through all of those things. It wouldn't have made me that driven, determined person to become this ultra runner later on that would, of course, take me even further, because I could reflect back on things that happened in my life when I was running these races and think, well, I've been through some pretty tough times. This is tough, but sure, I can get through this. Sometimes the things that really happen to you that are bad can also become kind of good in your life as well. But it takes reflection to realize that, of course. You can have anger and resentment and think, oh, that was terrible. But actually, did it make you who you are now? And are you a better person than you were then? And can you be even better going forward as well?
I could talk to you for hours about all of this, and I hope we'll have you back on the podcast because there are so many more things that I want to elaborate on. And before we wrap up, we always finish an episode with an animal Q&A, and I would love this to be dedicated not just to Gobi, but also to your cat, Lara, you said, right?
Yeah.
Lara, since Gobi gets so much fame, I want to make sure she also gets her attention. What is one of the reasons you're grateful for Lara?
Sometimes I ask myself, because she's a cat and she can be hard work. Gobi's the fun, easy one. Lara can be the more challenging one. But she also, I think what Lara does is, she's a cat. She wants perfection, pardon the pun. But she wants more from you all the time, and she's never happy with you. So I guess she's challenging is the word I'm looking for, and maybe that challenged you to be better as well. But she's an incredible cat, and she's been around for 18 years now, a big part of your life as well. And yeah, I've seen her grow from little kitten in my palm of my hand to big cat she is. So yeah. I guess she challenges me a lot, Lara the cat. Yeah, I wrote a book about her as well, and she there's parts in that shows the challenge that she is as a cat as well. She's a very feisty, determined individual. Of course, a cat. Yeah.
Well, what's the name of the book?
It's called Lara the Runaway Cat. Of course, a real cat. Mainly fictional story, but there are elements of the story that are real as well. So it's about her journey to find herself. She's an indoor cat. She decides to run away to find the outside world, and she ends up getting lost and goes on an adventure, ends up in Australia and realizes that actually home isn't so bad, and she has to find her own way back home. But she has lots of different adventures along the way, so it's a real fun read as well. Yeah,
I love that. I will put also not just Finding Gobi, but also this one in the show notes so our audience can have a look into this. What has Gobi taught you about loyalty?
everything. You know, there's a bit of footage that I see of Gobi at the race, and it's a little bit of drone footage, and occasionally I see it in something, and it's like Gobi and I running across this really rocky outcrop in the heat of the desert. And I'm running along, and I can see that I'm struggling, and I can see this little brown fur ball running next to me. And it brings a tear to my eye, this little bit of footage, because it's like, wow, what is she doing out there? What is she running from or running to herself? And of course, we can't ask Gobi. She can't talk. So, it would be amazing just to think, like, why me? That's the first thing I'd ask her if she could talk. Why me? And yeah, she's an incredibly loyal dog. She's been there for me throughout. And then, of course, the loyalty gets repaid when I go back to China and find her, and have stuck with her ever since. But yeah, it's pretty phenomenal sort of show of loyalty between us both, I think.
My next question would have been, if you could ask Gobi one question, what would it be? You already said, why me? Let's reverse it. If she could ask you a question, what do you think she would ask you?
That's a good question. Why couldn't we meet somewhere else? Why did we have to meet in a race across the desert?
Could it not have been easier?
Yeah, it could not have been easier. I don't know. Maybe she would ask the same thing, like, why did you do the things that you did for me? I'd also ask her, like, what were you doing out in the desert? Why were you out there? What were you surviving on? Like, there's just so many things. Like, I get asked all the time those questions, and it's like, only Gobi knows the answers. And the only good thing for me is if she could talk, if she could write a book, there'd be no need for me at all. So at least it keeps me in a job. So
that is funny. Dion, thank you so much for your time and sharing this beautiful story with us. And not just a story, but give us so much insight into your heart and inspiration and also encouragement that at any given moment we can turn our life around. And also that allowing ourselves to walk on different paths if life has something else for us in store. And to always remember, kindness travels far.
yeah, thanks for having me on the show. And, I'm just a normal human being like everyone else. But if it gives someone some inspiration or some thought to think, you know what, we can all achieve great things. Doesn't have to be an ultra marathon, that's for sure. We can all do wonderful things. We're all amazing human beings. And it gives someone the hope or thought or reflection to think that, then I hope that's the case, because that's always the best reward, of course, of sharing your own journey with other people, is not to gloat about the achievements. It's about to give people hope that they can maybe do something different in their own life as well, do something wonderful. Yeah.
I'm absolutely sure that will be the case. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a wrap for today, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you loved the conversation as much as we did, please share it with your family, with your friends, with all the animal lovers out there, and everyone you want to encourage and give hope to. And don't forget to tag us and also Dion to keep the conversation going. And we see you next Wednesday.